Hey, how's everyone doing today? Once again, we want to thank Brother Tyrone, Brother Levi, Brother Matt, Brother David for coming out and helping us have this conversation of men and mental health. Uh, this is an interesting topic. I'm gonna be honest. I've never had this conversation before with anyone else. Not sure if you all have, but we all know that numerous studies show that men are probably the last to go and seek mental health assistance. And let's, in the spirit of making us better fit for worship for God and being servants of Christ. It's healthy that we have these conversations, even as men, and that we discuss these topics. And so let's start with Uncle Tyrone. Uncle Tyrone, what does mental health mean to you?
Well, for me personally, when I think of mental health, immediately I start thinking of my psychological or emotional well-being. I'm functioning on a daily basis in terms of interacting with family members, with members of my work committee, and those of whom I come into contact with on a daily basis. Am I up to the task? Am I able to function at maximum capacity? So when I think of mental health, that's where I'm really thinking, how am I doing in terms of interactions and daily function?
And so is there anything in your personal professional world that allows you to see that more detailed than, let's say, the average person?
Definitely. Working in the field of occupational therapy now for about over 25 years, I've dealt with clients who've had mental issues from childhood and across the lifespan, and I've seen how they've had so many challenges and how they've been at times really not understood, and how difficult it is for society to actually assess what's going on with these individuals, to diagnose and to treat them. And so it's really a challenge. It's one of those areas that leave you many a times either speechless, helpless, or with little hope. And it's one of those areas that's never fully been, to say we have accomplished the task of fixing these problems.
Got it. That's really great. So I'm sure you'll be able to bring some great insight to this conversation. And by the way, I apologize. I just caught myself calling Brother Tyrone Uncle Tyrone. I grew up with Uncle Tyrone in my life, my whole life. He's an uncle to me. So pardon me if that slips. But Brother Tyrone, thank you for that. And let's go around to Brother Levi. How about yourself? What does mental health mean to you?
Yeah, thank you, Philip, and thanks for having me on this panel. I'm honored to be here. It's I think I want to repeat what Uncle Tyrone said, that it is kind of optimum function that I'm looking for when I think of mental health. I think there are a range of different issues. It's definitely a broad term. There's a ton of different specifics under this umbrella that can really debilitate us as men and brothers, as fathers, as husbands, as servants in the ecclesia, and as employees or business owners. And you want to be able to perform optimally. And I think in this day and age, as we're trying to juggle all those roles I just said, it can be really hard to keep all those balls in the air if you yourself have a problem or issues that you're trying to work through. So yeah, it's like mental health. I think the health, like physical health, like spiritual health, it's okay that it takes work. I think that's what I'm learning and recognizing, that to stay in shape I have to go to the gym, and to stay in shape physically I have to go to the gym. To stay in shape mentally, I need to put the work in to be at my best, which is what I believe my calling is to be.
100%. That's a great. It's funny that you mentioned the physical in shapeness or health, and how we tend to tackle that, but we forget that the brain is also it has muscle-like tendencies, right? We have to strengthen it. We have to recuperate, and we have to what's the word? We have to seek therapy sometimes. If you break a leg, you don't just get up and start running a mile. And the same thing with mental health. We can take these hits, and we need to sometimes take time to seek assistance. Brother David, I know that you'll love, I guess, stitching this together with physical health and
somebody get the cat.
Is there a cat in the room, David?
Cat helps with mental health.
There's a cat.
He wants to be involved.
The cat wants to give a few cents. So, Brother David, what does mental health mean to you?
Wow. Well, it's hard to answer that question. It's hard. I'm the type of person where it's like they have definitions for a lot of things. Because mental health is a very, very broad statement. Your mental health is, I guess, what state of mind that you're in at that moment. You know, what level are you? Are you depressed? Are you happy? Are you sad? Mental health in and of itself, I guess that's my definition. Because when you think about it, when you actually say the words to yourself, my mental, the health, that's the state in which I'm in. So now the follow-up question, what's the follow-up question now? So I can really get into it now.
We're gonna get into it. We're just trying to see where everyone's head is at as far as the term mental health. Gotcha. But so I see exactly what you're saying, David. Yeah. We're gonna open this up. But so brother Matthew, same question to you.
Yes, it's such a pleasure to be here. David, Philip, it's nice to meet you. And yeah, I'm Matt. I'm speaking to you from Kingston, Ontario. I guess I'll give a little bit of background or provide some perspective into how I'm speaking to the subject of mental health. So mental health has been a part of my life in a number of capacities. One is I myself have a mood disorder. So mental health is something that day in, day out, week in, week out, every year is something that I'm thinking about and actively working to keep in balance with everything else. And mental health is very important to me from how I've been impacted by other people's mental health, specifically in the arena of loss and suicide. And I only bring that up because that's what has brought me to my current work. I'm a graduate student here in Canada looking at youth suicide prevention through a relationship perspective. And when I think about mental health, I think that my journey with mental health has given me a language to talk about myself and for other people to talk to me with a lot more transparency and a lot more truth. And it's been a huge catalyst for connection and just some of the most profound encounters that I've had with other people and with God. And I guess I'll leave that there. I think we'll get into some of that, but that's kind of my background. And
Definitely. Thank you so much, man. And yeah, we're definitely going to try and see if we can get some personal experiences into this conversation. Because, and not to generalize, I hate generalizing. And when we started this discussion, I mentioned that men are statistically less likely to acknowledge when something's wrong, right? And, I think the conversation probably is more about emotional literacy, as Brother Matt said, being able to identify what is this that I'm feeling, right? As sometimes as guys, as brothers, me and David, as much as we probably see each other, for some reason we feel that just talking, playing basketball, sometimes letting the steam off, blowing off steam. That's what we say a lot, right? Blowing off steam, that's enough. But maybe there's more to it, right? So the next question that I'd like to ask you all is how has the state of your mental health affected you personally or someone you're close to? And I think, Brother Matt, since you've already kind of began to introduce your story, if you wouldn't mind just continuing there.
Yeah, sure. So I've had a diagnosis for about 6 years now, but looking back, I can definitely see how there was emotional health instability and definitely crisis at points for the last 10 and 12 years. And yeah, I mean, I guess, oh man, where do I want to take this? When I think about the two really big mental health situations in my own life, so my own journey with mental health, it being a dynamic thing, a day-by-day thing, and what happened with somebody who I'm very close to, is both of those happened very publicly. And it got to a point where in both situations there was hospitalizations and grieving in one of them. And so a lot of people knew about it. And so when my mental health issues really came to the fore, there was not, it wasn't like a hidden thing. It was very publicly known to a lot of my circles. And because of that, it really put me on a journey of thinking about mental health in relationship with people. And I guess when after I was hospitalized and walked out with a prescription and a diagnosis, I felt very numb for a very long time, and I did not feel like myself. And I remember looking around at a group of friends, like laughing, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, what is this sensation that I feel something in my chest, and I think that's maybe laughter, but I don't know. So it was a real like wilderness time in my life. And because this happened so publicly, I spent several years trying to trace myself back to who I was through the lenses of these people who witnessed this absolute explosion in my life. And for many years, I wondered like who I was, and I wondered like, would I ever be the Matt that my mom remembers, or the Matt that, you know, I kind of remember. And it's just been in the last couple of years that I've kind of given that up. I've kind of given up trying to trace myself back to something, back to a place, back to a person. And I'm starting to trust internally the sense of worth and the sense of who I am and who I know myself to be. But still checking in with certain people to see if they're seeing things that I can't see from my perspective, which I think is an important lesson in mental health, is bringing people into that conversation, and not just anybody, but choosing who you bring into that conversation about your mental wellness, your mental state. As David said, it's a really dynamic thing, and to have a pulse on it both requires an internal awareness and shining a light on some of the dark places of your mind and heart that you maybe haven't looked in a very long time, or you maybe have never looked, period. And allowing other people and God and Jesus into those spaces, which requires so much work, and so it's such a risky place to put yourself. But yeah, I don't know. I'll put a pin in this. I think I have a lot more to say, but I want to hear what Tyrone and Levi and David and Philip think.
Yeah, no, thank you definitely, Matt, for being, for opening and giving us a glimpse of that personal. And it takes a lot to be able to articulate, the things that you've been through and give your testimony. And we really do appreciate that. And it takes strength to do so. Let's go over to Uncle Tyrone. Or I'm sorry. See, I keep on doing that, Brother Tyrone.
Yeah, I mean, I really do appreciate what Matt is sharing, because I could tell you this condition has been taboo for many years, not only in the world, to speak, but even in the churches, even in the ecclesias. For many people, Growing up, you might hear somebody whispering behind someone else's back that so and so has a mental condition or something like that, you know. So I think in our generation, in our time, a lot of stuff has become more open where we can talk about it. And I feel that's like half the battle being won, because we know that sin comes in all shape and form, and it manifests itself in the earth realm in a fallen world. David tells us in Psalm 51 verse 5 that we were born in sin and shaped in iniquity. So each and every one of us is dealing with some form of shape of disability. So the thing about mental disabilities I've found dealing with people over the years, personally and otherwise, is that there are various phases of it. It could be mild, it could be moderate, it could be a maximum case, it could be totally debilitating, you know, where you cannot function at all. Like Matt mentioned, you know, you had to be hospitalized. But how about those individuals who find that there's something wrong, but they don't feel like they can speak to others about it? And I find that in some cases, that's where we end up with full-blown episodes. Because as men, we kind of have this machismo kind of a thing going, you know. We got to be the, you know, we can't look like we're failing. You know, you're known as a brother or so and so of social standing, whatever standing in the society, and you're afraid that maybe some people will look at you differently after this, and that makes it even worse. So what I've found is that when folks have been able to share, because part of therapy is able to interact in a group and talk about what's happening and have support of other folks. And I've found that those who've become institutionalized sometimes, even for shorter periods, is because they've never had a support system. And things have, you know, started to slide downhill over a period of time. And so I believe that, you know, for those that are close to you, especially if you have a good rapport, you can start there. And I found that that has really been helpful when you can start sharing those, you know, feelings of not, you know, going away from reality or paranoia or not being coherent, you know, things that are happening to you that you can't quite put a finger on. But like Matt mentioned, you have a support system in place. That's helpful.
There you go. Definitely. That's because no man is an island, right? It's you know, kind of being able to see who's around you, who's willing to listen, and taking advantage of those resources. Brother Levi, we'll swing this question to you.
The question is that, my own mental health, I guess. I really credit actually our ecclesia, Simi Hills in California, always having having an open conversation about this, and the ecclesia actually sponsors like they have an arrangement with a mental health professional, because I think they've had an awareness that there are issues that can come up in the ecclesia where that requires someone to go beyond, I think, just this counsel, you know, with the board or with their brothers or sisters, that, you know, it's kind of more serious episodes. Now I'm saying I'm giving credit to that because I think it made the conversation of having professional help, it made it okay in my life from an early age, you know, from an early example, which I really think has been an amazing blessing in my life, because then when I have had my problems come up, you know, incidences arise, I've had it in my mind that it's okay for me to go see counseling, which I think is, that really in itself is a amazing blessing, because like we're talking about, I think there is a culture which like I think, like Uncle Tyrone said, that that is changing, which is already having won half the battle, but there's definitely a culture that, you know, that like you said, Philip, that every man is an island, and that, you know, we need to grit our teeth and clench our fists and get through it. But yeah, I think it's been an incredible blessing. Now I've worked with the therapist I have now for the last 2 years, you know, to find a good therapist and have a good kind of pattern with that. And so yeah, I mean, and that's been it's absolutely made me stronger. You know, it's like, I think there is so much that we can offer each other as brothers, and I think, like Matt was talking about, because because Matt and I are close friends, and he's told me, in confidence before that, hey, since I've had, essentially mental episodes in the past, I need you to tell me when I'm having one again. Just like, because Matt kind of talked about, I think, an interesting thing about not trusting himself. So that is that's a really strong example of what I think we should have with everybody. Like, just because Matt has had, I would say, a major episode in his life, and now reaches out to his people to get that kind of deep accountability with him. Well, I need that, with my brothers and my friends, and there's something. This is a little bit of an aside, but there's something to be said that it also has to be outside of my marriage, right? So I can't. It's not always fair to rely all my mental health on my wife, right? And I think there's something that's maybe another door we could go down, because I think there is a responsibility to our brothers to be open and able, and then have that relationship, have that bridge built already, so that when I see something going on the other side of the bridge, hey, I can go over there and tell you, hey, something's going on over here. That accountability and that love for each other is really important. So that was a lot of directions, but yeah, that's kind of my story, and I think that is definitely one takeaway that I would love someone to have here. If I've definitely like posted about it on my social media, and kind of I try to be public about my relationship with a therapist, kind of as an example for others, specifically brothers too, and sisters, who are who might be in the same rut over and over again. To go back and torture the physical fitness idea, it's like you can't do the same exercises and expect different results. And sometimes people need to shake up what they're doing to reach that next level of fitness, right, of health. And I think that's definitely the reason to have a therapist. So that's one thing I wanted to get out today, is definitely and it's never been easier to find a therapist, especially through this COVID times. There's so much telehealth and phone mental health, video call mental health that's available through your employer or through nonprofits, stuff like that. So
definitely, and it's interesting because I'm stitching together. I'm a full-time photographer. I use gear that most people have no clue what their purpose would be, right? Even the obvious things, let's say flashes and lights, they're like, oh, what does this thing do? Oh, okay, that's what it does. But when you show someone an array of lenses, and because what I hear Levi talking about sounds like a toolbox, as in knowing when to apply pressure or force on one tool and allocating it to another. And so I'm not going to shoot your professional headshot, Levi, with a 14 millimeter, right? Unless that's what you're going for, but ideally that's not what I would use. And so it sounds like, even in regards to relationships, we mentioned bandwidth earlier before we got on. The people around us even have their own things going on, and we have to be careful not to overwhelm them with. So I like what I'm hearing as far as especially knowing when a therapist is necessary. And Brother David, just because it's been so long since I rephrased since I restated the question. I know, but we're here. So how has the state of your mental health affected you personally or someone close to you?
Well, the state of my mental health, how has it affected me personally? Well, I could give an example from work. I work in high school, so being with the Department of Education, I didn't notice a lot of things. I've been there since I was 18. I'm 25 now. I didn't notice a lot of things like egos. I didn't understand that. I wasn't raised like that. I didn't understand how cruel people could be. I didn't understand adults in and of itself. So I was doing my thing, doing my little fitness class, working out with the kids. Everybody's going crazy. Everybody's having fun. Then eventually you start to, I feel like there's a lot of, I don't know what it is, but eventually I was getting calls like, David, why are you never at your post? And mind you, I'm at my post the entire time, man. So like my whole thing is, this has been going on for years. There's been a lot of complaints, so on and so forth. I am used to keeping it all in. I'm like Brother Tyrone just said, men, we just roll with the punches. A lot of things just happen and we just roll with the punches. So I just kept it all in. I'm not sure where it was going, but I wasn't feeling it, and that was great. So for years and years, I would be doing that. Eventually, you start to notice it starts to manifest in different ways, like your action. I find myself being more irritable. I find myself being angry, and I don't even know why I'm angry. I don't know where this is coming from. And the thing is, there's nothing going on. I'm just chilling here. I'm just getting mad out of nowhere. Learning how to deal with it in and of itself. I run a lot. I just did 5 miles today. Daniel, but Asiso spoke today, and I was online with my headphones on running, because mentally what you get is runner's high, and runner's high just calms all of that down and puts things into perspective. I even forgot the question that you asked me just now, but it's okay.
No, you're answering it.
Because I'm gonna go off at a rant. I'm gonna go off at a
Hey,
rant.
don't worry. You're definitely answering. Just continue there.
Matt was saying, he was saying he doesn't know what place, or he was trying to trace his way back to where he was, and he doesn't know, what I realized is when it comes to depression, I've been really, really depressed. If anybody's ever heard any of my music, what I've realized in this stage is you can't get back to where you were, because God put you through those situations to help you grow. You're a whole different person now, and he's giving you calluses and scars that you'll be able to use to teach. And those lessons, everything that we've learned, because we're all, like I said, we're men. In this society, I feel like it's hard to be a man. It's really hard to be a man, because a lot of things happen and how the laws are articulated. It's really hard, because, and then when you want to go to seek help, you're put down. I've never been the type to not be open about how I feel and what I feel. I've always been the type to speak up or approach the situation, confront it, and make sure it's fine. The new person, whoever you are, you just got to learn who that is, and just learn to keep navigating that and using it to your potential. Because right now you're stronger than what you were. I try not to look at whatever I've been through as negative, because it's not negative. It may seem negative, but when you see that little CYC kid going through the same thing, and you understand depression, you understand the signs, you understand the cutting, you understand I kind of work in a school, so you see the signs. When you can understand it, you're able to shout it out quick and just say what's going on, or you'll be able to know how to talk to them. So you can't really look at it, or try your best not to look at it negative, because your problems may be the thing to save somebody else's life. Yep. And that's how deep it is. As simple as it is, that's how deep it is.
Definitely. And for those who don't know, for those who are listening, who are not a part of the Christadelphian body worldwide, CYC is something called the Christadelphian Youth Circle. This is where we dedicate, whether it be a Saturday or whatever it is, to children, to youth. To Uncle Tyrone is one of the heads of in Queens for CYC. And it's interesting because I didn't know that until I had a CYCer talk to me and was like, "Yo, Phil, you haven't been around in weeks. You forgot about us? Because we got stuff to talk about." You know what I'm saying? Like, and there's this idea of talking and letting things out, letting frustrations out. We see David in the scriptures. David seems to have kept very few things to himself, right? And I forgot where I heard this before, but I discovered journaling a couple of years back, and someone had described journaling as when the body consumes something that it doesn't like, it's going to get it out. Naturally, it's going to get it out. Mentally, our brain doesn't have that mechanism. So unfortunately for us, it's either going to take talking to a therapist, writing it down on paper. Even if you burn that paper, throw it inside the garbage, let it out, right? And so it's interesting what all of you are saying, but David, I definitely see, culturally speaking, especially for guys, it's tough. It's tough. We think that there's this depreciating value of masculinity that occurs when we seek help. But we all have one thing in common, or we all have many things in common. One of the biggest things we have in common is our connection through faith. And so how has faith helped each of you approach mental health in these moments of distress, in these moments of confusion, and why is this happening to me? Let's start with Brother Levi this time.
How has faith helped me approach mental health? I think for me it's really the responsibility that leads me to want to get better. So by wanting to be like Jesus and by wanting to be someone who produces fruits of the Spirit, and I think when I'm recognizing that I'm clearly not in a place where I could be, doing these things in a better way, or I'm just stuck in the same negative loops in my head, or the same lifestyles that I'm returning to, the same sins that I'm returning to. It's like, well, something is not working in my own life, and that to me is what drives me to mental health. So it's I guess it can kind of be it drives me to take care of my mental health, and drives me to talk about stuff and figure it out. So I guess like my faith, the love that I know I'm shown, and the hope that I've been given, is kind of the inspiration that gets me on the road to figure out what's going on. What's the injury, or whatever. What's the roadblock that's in my way that I need to remove. Which gets back to kind of our first conversation, like just help me back to performing, optimally.
There you go. And Brother David, do you mind taking that question next? How has faith helped you approach mental health?
Well, the Bible in and of itself, I grew up in the church since I was, let's say, zero of the age of 0. So the words is complete. The words in the Bible are complete. My interpretations are completely different, and my understanding is completely different from that age to now. So a lot of times when I'm going through a lot of things, that the words stand out a lot more. And even to the decisions that I make, the words stand out a lot more. Even to the people that I'm around. The Bible says you got to be in the world, but not of the world. Like those, as simple as that is. And you look at it, it's so huge because of even you be around the worst type of people and still maintain the respect and with those people, and protecting your mental health in knowing how to deal with them. Respect is a universal language, but using the scriptures are so powerful that it's ingrained in here. So a lot of things that we want to do, which is why I feel like we go through a lot of mental health, because we're given free will. So we know these things are wrong. We know, but we still choose to do it. And then this is why we go against the grain, and then we're so messed up. And then usually when we go out and then we take a little vacation and we take a break from that, we're not doing the same things get better. It's made for us to stay on a straight path, and we as human beings like to deviate, and that's what we like to do, because we like to, and this is what Danny was talking about earlier, we like to seek security in ourselves instead of God, and that's where everything gets thrown off.
Definitely. And there's this when I heard you speak about being brought up in the truth, you have the Bible and the scriptures. Every time you read the Bible, depending on the time period, certain verses that you just didn't really consider hits different a little bit. Like we were talking a couple weeks ago, how certain scriptures now, under this whole situation with the pandemic and what 2020 looks like, they hit a little bit different. I'm reading verses and I'm like, I see, my eyes are open now. It's different. And so I guess David, what you were getting at was this idea that, that constant coming to meeting, hearing the word, reading, that can sometimes be its own level of therapy, right? And so let's go over to Brother Matt. How has faith helped you in your mental health?
Oh, that's a good question. I think like the call of Jesus and what God is trying to communicate in the Bible is ultimately that things get better. Like things get better. It gets better. There is a bedrock here of mercy and justice and things being right. And like, that's always going to be true. And moreover, flip to the last page, things get better when Jesus is around. You know, when you see like the very image of God walking, full of all these fruits of the Spirit. And I really press against somebody who points to that getting better as being at the second coming. That's true, I agree, but I don't think that's like necessarily the full stop. I think that getting better is today, or maybe tomorrow, or maybe next week. And I think that what God extends to us is, you know, he's in control, which is very hard to wrap our heads around sometimes when you think about suffering and what God doesn't do sometimes and what he allows to happen. And that's a domain that I have to surrender and just like lay a lot of I don't knows at his front door or somewhere. I'm not sure where. But where was I going with this thought?
That was me the whole time.
I think all of this is, you know, I think when I think about mental health, it's all in orientation to God and Jesus. You know, there's not I mean, for me, there has been a transactional kind of piece to my mental health that has totally flipped me around. And, you know, I think we'll talk about the kind of buffet of pieces that come into working on ourselves. So I'll save that for later. But I'm just so like when things have been the darkest, that has been when the most profound prayers have ever been uttered. And like sometimes I am in a place where I don't believe that things will get better in my life, or I might feel very trapped. And I think knowing that like Jesus is holding this, he's like holding that faith for me sometimes, that things will get better. And when I'm ready for it, I can go, he's immediately there just holding it. And I can kind of start to wrap myself around the many blessings and the many goodness that God and Jesus bring into my life. And I want to extend that to this sense of others around us and community and connection. And I think sometimes it's other people that have to hold the jaded fragments that things are going to get better and that you are who you say you are and who God says you are. And, you know, they hold him long enough so that when you feel like you're ready and when color starts to come back to your universe, you can go to Tyrone and David and Levi and Philip and wherever these pieces are, and they're holding them for you. And you can embrace that while they embrace you. But that reality is only real to you to the degree to which you show up to your own life and your own story and your own wrestlings with mental health. Mental health is a huge catalyst for relationship and for finding profound trust and profound love. But it begins with a sense of openness and transparency with yourself to notice what's going on and begin to share that with our Heavenly Father and Jesus, and to begin to share that with the others who hold you dear.
Definitely. That's amazing. Set of words that you just gave, and what came immediately to my mind was, 1 Peter 5, casting all your cares upon him, for he careth for you. There's that reassurance, like we know that we can't serve a God who's not going to swoop in at some time, right? And at least sustain us from day to day. It might get hard, but he'll sustain us from day to day. And some translations, when it says casting all your care, it actually translates that to casting all your anxieties on him. And it's very interesting. And especially also, Matt, you mentioned the individuality and the singleness. We tend to we bash other people like, oh, why are you struggling? That doesn't make sense. You don't have any problems. But everybody handles their problems at their own, level. And so we can't minimize people's issues. And Brother Tyrone, if you mind just letting us know how faith has impacted your mental health.
Well, I'm so glad you quoted 1 Peter 5, because, in terms of faith and belief and having the background in the scriptures, you realize you have a vertical relationship and you have horizontal relationships. When you cast your anxieties, you're using that vertical relationship between yourself and God, between yourself and Christ. We're told in James 5:16, confess your faults one to another and pray for one another, for the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much, that you may be healed. So faith is telling me that healing is possible, that it's possible that people can move on. Like Matt was saying, it might happen right away. It's a process. It happens over time. But the mere fact that you can confess your faults one to another, it speaks to transparency that we're talking about. And what happens is that I've seen, like our brother mentioned about the California Ecclesia, we discussed that years ago when we looked at the way they had set up a counseling committee that was external to the meeting, because some of the issues we were having were issue of confidentiality, where maybe at that particular point in time in the individual's life, they're not ready to put it out there yet. Yeah. They're still struggling to see how they can cope with it. So they need that period of time where there's some kind of confidentiality. And it was found that at times that wasn't there. So California was referenced in terms of using outside counselors. But what I've found is over the time, our brethren, those who ourselves were taking on issues of others, was like what David mentioned earlier, became so stressed. I was around older brethren in the 90s, and these brethren were always angry, always upset. And I'm sure they didn't even know why. So one day I decided to say, you know what, I'm going to cut myself from all these committees, stick with the youths, because I found that I'm going home and I'm getting upset and mad and crazy with everybody. So what's happening with me? And what was happening is that a lot of the stuff that I was taking in, I didn't have an outlet. And that's what happened to a lot of brothers over the year. A lot of folks over the years have taken on certain horizontal issues that other people have, but they don't have a way to disperse of it. So it becomes a part of you. What ends up happening is that you yourself become a mess. So this issue of confessing your faults is sharing the issue and then casting a net and just letting it go and say, God, you take it. I can't handle it. I need to be healed. And that healing starts when you realize you don't have the burden to bear all by yourself. So the faith approach is the understanding that you can approach God horizontally, approach your brethren, go to God vertically, and that intersection between the divine and the natural brings out healing.
Yep. Definitely. And so before we go on, Brother Levi, thank you so much for your contributions. I know that unfortunately you have to leave us at this time.
Yeah, no, sorry again to leave early. We have a memorial service that we hold in our backyard on Sundays, so I got to get to that. But no, yeah, this is just an important conversation. I did want to. There's a really powerful book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Peter Scazzaro. It kind of argues that you can't be. It ties our mental health with our spiritual health, which I think is part. We've kind of been saying that through this conversation that you kind of can't be spiritually healthy when you're emotionally unhealthy. You can't really grow as a brother, I believe, if you have an anger problem, if you have a substance abuse issue, if you have a problem in your marriage or whatever. These are things that you need to get right before you can, at the same time as you're getting right with our Heavenly Father. So that's another kind of thing I wanted to share as a resource for people. Other than that, yeah, like I said before, don't be afraid to get a therapist if this is something that you think, if you have an issue you need to work on. Other than that, yeah, I'm again sorry to leave early and love this conversation. Wish I had another hour. But yeah, nice to see you all.
Just before you go, Levi,
yeah,
don't forget to add with a Christian perspective. That helps.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. All right. Well, I'll see you guys.
All right, Levi, thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay. So as we continue, as Brother Tyrone just said, and unfortunately we have to do this with we tried to schedule and get everyone on the same times, but but we'll continue the conversation. Brother Tyrone said something important, as in to exhaust the efforts of trying to find therapists with a Christian perspective, right? Or else we run the risk of probably getting the wrong type of help, and our faith can take a hit. And so, so the question that I'd like to follow up with is, knowing that there are, even within the truth, within the Christadelphian community, people who are licensed and might be able to help out, knowing that that's one of the things about mental health, that it's not just these random therapists around the world who are trying to get you to pill pop and write you these subscriptions. But what do you think is important for the faith community to know about mental health?
Well, first thing is, like-minded people can understand. You can't, if you haven't been through it. Philip, just open up the so I can see everybody's face. Also, I like to see everybody's face.
It's quarantine. We want to see people, right?
If I see my face, I'm gonna forget what we talking about. I don't know why my brain does. I need to see people.
Hey.
But if you haven't been through it, don't judge somebody who's going through it. Also, we're a brotherhood. That's one thing. If you can't notice those signs, because a lot of people who are depressed, they end up pushing everybody away. And also, it may look like this person is smoking itself into oblivion. It may look like this person is self-harming itself into oblivion, when that's not the case. It's a cry for help. It's a big cry for help. And if you can't understand that, and then you realize that, it's going to be on you. And that's the tough part about it. That's the real tough part about it. And don't put nobody. That's why when people come to me with things like you have no idea. And I'm like, I'm just a kid myself. And I'm like, what are you telling me? But they're like, I feel like I'm comfortable enough to come to you because you've been through whatever, and so on and so forth. So that's why I try to keep a certain level of confidentiality. Anybody who comes up to me and wants to talk about those type of things, they have the outlet to be able to speak. The worst thing you could tell somebody is he's over exaggerating or he's making it up. Man, I was told that before and I got so angry, and I pushed so many people away, and so many people wanted to help. These were the nicest people, and I would say things that makes no sense. You know what I mean? And also, you expect your brothers, you expect the people in the church to be the ones to understand, the closest ones to understand, and those may be the ones to make it worse. And a lot of times, it could be the outside people to help too. God brings those people to help too. But if you're not good here and you're not working on it, a lot of times they could throw you off too. So everything is a balance. Definitely. Everything is like a balance. You know what I mean? That's why you got to always go back to the scripture. And that's the process.
That's home base. It's home base.
Home base. That's what keeps you grounded. That's what keeps you grounded.
Brother Tyrone, you mind answering that as well? What
I think one of the things is for people to understand the complexity of the issues that you're dealing with. It's not a simple matter. You just can't shake it off like a bad cold. Let it could just go away. Why can't you get over it? You have to realize that this thing is so wide and so deep. There's so many different causes, from genetic to biological, environmental, traumas. There's so many causes. There are issues where people have been affected by matters they don't even know that affected them in early childhood, and they're doing certain things in a certain way that your level of patience has run out. And so honestly, what it is that at times we really don't understand what we're dealing with. And when you don't understand something, the easiest solution sometimes is to dismiss it. So I guess if we can start to try to walk in that person's shoe for a minute, just imagine yourself in that situation. Stop for a minute. Say, what if that was me? Then maybe you can start to appreciate how bad it can get. And then you might want to take a few steps to see where you can truly help. Because I'm telling you, I've been in situations where when you left a meeting within a therapy session, you feel like if your head is gone, you've got like a tremendous headache. You've got to find a way now to get rid of that headache. You got to find an outlet. So a lot of times the faith community is not prepared to deal with it, or they don't want to handle that issue. It's just too much. So it takes a level of maturity, a level of discussion, a level of people coming together and understanding when they need external help. When there's some professional that might need to be called in, that you might not have been trained. Like you mentioned earlier, Brother Philip, that you're into photography. And when I have certain issue with photography or with the computer, I call on you. I don't waste time. Listen, now you're not going to find me messing around with that stuff. That's not my thing. I tell people, why can't you? No, that's not my thing. I'm calling Brother Philip. You understand? I don't mess with what I don't, do. So I think if we come to that understanding that this is not an area that we have a brother that when it came to youth, he said to me, honestly, Brother Tyrone, you try with the youths. That's not my thing. And he's being honest. I'm not going to call him to lose his mind with the kids. That's not his thing. So understanding your function in the ecclesia, we're told we're the body of Christ. We're the hands, the feet, the eyes, the ears. The wisdom in the faith community is to understand who you are and what God has called you to function at what level so you can be effective.
There you go. That's it right there, definitely. And so, Brother Matt, can you also contribute a little bit to that, to the idea of what can we tell the faith community about, or what would you like the faith community to know about mental health and that struggle?
Couple things. And my answer is kind of going to bleed into the remaining questions. So first and foremost, I think it's important to acknowledge that, in anywhere you go in the world and society, with the exception of a few small communities in like Norway, or, they've kind of got mental health figured out, or Sweden, or anywhere up in the Baltics, really, they're pretty good with mental health. But here in the Western world, and in the Eastern world, in some places, there's just a dogma around mental health. And in the church setting, especially in my experience, that is like really extra tightened up. And there's in some places even a stronger dogma and a stronger prejudice and a stronger vacuum of mental health is either like we're afraid of it, or it's not a thing, or we don't talk about it, or it's taboo. And so, at least in my experience, now I have been in some places that are oases of being literate around mental health and having a really great social and system perspective and faith perspective. So really, I think that's an important perspective to put behind us and to talk about. This is a conversation that we need to be having at ecclesial levels. And like what Levi said, I've belonged to ecclesias that do kind of have a more embracing mental health perspective and provide services and go out of their way to support individuals with mental health issues. But I think, I guess my point here is that we need to bring mental health to the agenda, to the what message is getting delivered from the platform, to the what kind of months and weeks in the calendar that everyone else has flagged are important for mental health, like suicide prevention week or month. Are we as an ecclesia talking about that? I think it's important we need to be listening more to bring mental health into our church spaces. Like, what are our church spaces for? Like, they're for the wrestlings. They're for people who are trying to figure out what's reality. They're for people who feel really lost, and those are people who wrestle with mental health conditions. These are the people who we need to be considerate of. And so I think that's my first point. My second point, I think, is in regard to how we, our culture and our mindset and our openness to how we encourage people who have a mental health concern, or how we support people who have a mental health concern or condition. There can be a lot of interesting thoughts on moving down different avenues of how people get help. I can speak personally to what's worked for me and how I've found stability. And I used the buffet analogy earlier, but it really is a buffet of things that helps people find ground beneath their feet that feels hopeful and that feels true. And for me, I would not be who I am today and feel sane and like Legion sitting on the edge of the boat. Like, that's how I feel most days. And I wouldn't feel that way if it weren't for daily medication that I take, that I've been taking for 6 years. I see a counselor. I've seen multiple counselors. I fired a couple of counselors because they were horrible. I found somebody who I could really work with, and we could really engage in some of the thoughts that I was working through. With healthy sleep and eating and exercise, and it's probably the 20 things that go into me feeling stable most of the time. And that has been a walk that's taken years to get to, and has involved lots of people along the way who've either just been encouraging or who have kind of helped lead me down and find like yoga. Yoga is a really helpful 20-minute thing I can do that's very centering. Now, would I replace that for the medication that I take every day? No, like I do the like, and sometimes one of those is not right, and you need to kind of listen to your body and your head and your thoughts and take notice of what's going on. And sometimes professionals are the people that help you dial in the switches, whether that's a counselor or a psychiatrist or your family doctor. Like, most people don't know that family doctors can prescribe you a medication or something that might take the edge off. I'm not saying everybody go get medicated if you feel sad or anxious, because that's a normal emotion. But if you're experiencing a really acute swing and you're feeling like you're on another planet and you're spending lots of money and you're not sleeping and you feel yourself kind of floating above 6 inches above the floor, it's really worth having a conversation with somebody who can help. And this is a quote from one of my close friends who is kind of a mental health ally, and we check in on each other, is that, the right cluster of things, the right bouquet of perspectives and support and practice and pieces brings you back to the land of the living. It absolutely does. And if you are listening to this and you're in an absolute pit where there's no light, or you haven't had a positive thought in months, or if you just feel like you're about to snap, like, okay, that's a valid experience, but things do get better, I promise. And it might not be tomorrow or next week, but slowly, they will. As we walk in faith, and as we make this a thing of prayer, and as we search in the Bible and find all kinds of people who struggled with mental health issues. Mary Magdalene being my personal hero, who was the first person on record that Jesus said hello to after he walked out of the grave. This woman with 7 demons. And what were those? I'm projecting that it's mental health related. I don't actually know. But Jesus cares. All right, I'll stop talking.
Do we listen
on a light too, because it's getting pretty dark here. It's not as setting in Canada, but I'll pass it back to Philip.
No, it's interesting because even the businesses of the world, I know someone who her job has random yoga sessions, And this is them acknowledging that even though this is not a spiritual experience, for you to be fully functioning and at optimal ability, we need you to be de-stressed, uncompressed, and ready. And so even the businesses of the world have found out that things like yoga help, things like breathing sessions help. And it's interesting that, you know, sometimes the faith community and the people who are focused most on, you know, hoping to get into this kingdom where everything is peaceful, all things are relieved. It's interesting how we sometimes can be slack in regards to making sure that we're doing everything possible within our churches and ecclesias to make sure that we're exhausting our efforts to make sure that people are kind of doing okay, right? And if they're not doing okay, in making a situation where it's inviting for them to seek help. So coming down towards the end, I'm going to combine these two questions. What are some practical ways by which you took care of your own mental health, and how have you been encouraged by others? Like in alignment with your practical ways, how have others helped you? What are some things that people said, people did in order to help you? So let's start with Uncle Tyrone this time.
Yeah, I would say a holistic approach is always important. You got to deal with your mind, your body, and your spirit. In 1 Kings 19, we have a very great example, Elijah. He had come to his end. He was so stressed out after the encounter with King Ahab, and he was left with a situation where he was running for his life, and he was going to die. When we read that chapter, we find in verse 5-6, God knew that the journey was too much for him in his current state. He let Elijah rest, recharge, gave him encouragement, a new purpose, and an assistant, Elisha, verse 15-18. And so what we find is that we need enough rest. Paul says, little bodily exercise profiteth a little. So take the little exercise. Spiritual exercise profiteth eternity. What I've found, what causes a lot of mental issues is we live in societies that we're overstressed. And it's happened to our parents for many generations, from Adam all the way up. And these things have caused cracks in our system. So we got to take back our time. We got to say, this much time in the day, I'm going to be using for some physical exercise. This much time of the day, I'm going to be using for meditation, prayer, singing of psalms, hymns, spiritual songs. We're told that's how we decompress. This time of the day, I'm going to be using for, let's say, family, or however you're going to divide it up. But you need to have balance in life. So practical steps that you might take is that you divide your hours up in any 24 given that God has blessed you with, those given hours, and do some time management. And remember yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself first, you can't take care of others. So that's what I wanted to say.
There we go. And we learn that every single time we hop into a plane, right?
Yep.
Brother David, how about you? What are some practical ways that you've taken care of your own mental health, as well as what are some interesting ways that others have helped you along that path?
Well, when I was going through my worst, I used to write prayers, write out the prayers. Mm-hmm. My music, I write poetry. I sing. I do a lot of music, and I put it out there for others to benefit from it, to understand that yeah, you're not alone. Yeah, sometimes it usually takes somebody that another person respects to be like, yo, man, I'm not the only person. Okay, I'm not crazy. All right, I'm not nuts. No, you're not. It's just a process. One of my coworkers introduced me to running. So I've been with a running community. They're really fast. There was this one 13-year-old that destroyed all of us, and it's insane because everybody's marathon runners. So I'm like, this kid, I lost them. They lost me completely. I don't know where they went, but it's okay. I just did 5 miles today. You know what I mean? I got another 5 miles on Tuesday, another 6 miles on, you know what I mean? And it's great. It's great mentally. What else is there? They got other ways. Running with a group of people, being with a group of people who are positive, because sometimes you feel people a lot of times. It's like, oh, that negative feeling, and you bringing me down. You have a pessimistic vibe, and I got to stay away from you. But if I know you're one of my brothers in the church, I try to bring myself close to you as much as possible. You know what I mean? Just because the difference between you and the world is you're a brother. That's the difference. So even though you may be doing some crazy things, I still see you at a higher level because, you know what I mean? We're brothers. That's the difference. So the fact that a stranger was able to help me in that way, that completely pulled me out of a very deep, dark place was amazing. Cause I thought that could never possibly happen. I'm like, everyone outside is evil. Everyone outside is evil. And even to sit down into this meeting, my mental health was going through a lot of craziness. What if this or this is that? And there's so many different people there. So many different people there. But I realized moving forward is just trying to embrace the fears more. Everything that's very fearful, just embrace it. Embrace it and move forward. Say a little prayer, whatever it is to get that off, and just go. Just go. Don't think too much, because then that's when we Jonah and the whale. That's when we is it Jonah? Yes, Jonah. All right, then we kind of before I used to say no. Anyway, all right, that's it.
Water was involved in both stories, but it was Jonah. So, Brother Matt, you mind continuing us on with that? Some practical ways and some people have helped you.
I had something.
My bad.
Really,
we do.
No, good. To reiterate a couple things you said, like lean into it. Like it sounds so counter thinking, but the anxiety or the sad thought or whatever it might be, like choosing to face it and to use David's language, embrace it, and choosing to lean into that in not just willy-nilly, but just to like do it deliberately with a system of support and with maybe the help of a professional. And I think sometimes it's really scary to shine a light on the dark places and the dark thoughts that you don't dare to go. But I think it's in that process. It's always a process. I feel, today I thank God that for feeling sane and for feeling stable. And I'm so grateful that I have that today. But even today and tomorrow, it's a process, and it's something that it could take in my own mental health, it could take a very bad U-turn in a couple months. I don't know, but I am going to rest that on the shoulders of Jesus, because I don't need to think about that right now. But I think powerful phrase, you are not alone. Like that you cannot say that enough. Like whoever's watching this, you are not alone in what you're going through. And it's risky. It's a huge risk to tell people what's going on, and to take maybe it's a dinner with the same person that you eat dinner with every night, or maybe it's you're sitting next to the same person every Sunday for football or church or whatever. And then it's just leaning over and saying, hey, like, I want to tell you something. I'm really struggling with fill in the blank. But that taking those small risks, like, yes, you will have some people who don't know what to do and just freak out. That has happened. But more often than not, people will show up to that. People will eat that up. And people will, you will find that that is a pathway to powerful connection. And I've been doing that for years in my own struggles with mental health. And it's just, the people who've been able to breathe life into those moments where I feel like I'm desperately alone and I feel like no one can understand what I'm going through, because I took a risk and I said, I don't feel anything right now. I feel absolutely nothing. I am standing in the void, and people will show up. Like, I promise. And I think Jesus and God are the same. Like, that showing up might look a little bit differently. Maybe it turns into a written prayer or a poem or a thought that clicks in like an hour later. You feel all of a sudden moved to go on a walk, or you feel moved to call this person. Like, it does get better, and you are not alone. I think there's this quote that I really love from a poet and a philosopher. Her name is Jennifer Michael Hetch, and she says that we believe each other into being. So even when I don't feel like I'm amounting to anything, or I'm very empty or anxious or whatever, you can say something, or you can say, you can believe that I'm actually who you think I am. And, God and Jesus are doing this. They're believing that we are who they created us to be, and embracing that and being able to give into that when you don't feel it is so powerful, and brings you to a place of feeling, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm right now. I'm gonna get past it to Philip, but
No.
I don't know. I'll leave it there.
It was good. It was good. It was good.
No,
it was good.
that's amazing, because it's something that so many people need to hear, that you are not alone. Even physically, there are people who literally might be alone, but even within that situation, you look at Job, right? And there was a time period where he was like, yo, my friends have left me. My wife no longer knows the scent of my breath. And so even he had to deal with that. But at the end of the day, we see him having these dialogues and conversation with the only relationship that he knew mattered. And it's hard for a lot of us to come to that understanding, but that is also a reality for some people who don't have these communities around them. And so last and final, we're going to make this one fun. In one sentence, this might be harder for Brother Matt, because he just gave us a little, he already gave us a soundbite with "You are not alone." But one sentence, how would you encourage someone struggling with mental health concerns? And we're going to start it off with Brother Tyrone.
I would say, make sure you're praying and meditating, and seek counseling, so that whatever you're going through, you're not alone.
There you go. There you go. And Brother David?
Go back to what genuinely makes you happy. If it be art, running, music, just do it. Whatever makes you genuinely happy. Yes.
There you go. That's good advice. And Brother Matt?
I'm not scared of what you're going through, and I don't understand what you're going through, and I can't understand, but I'm here.
There you go. Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. And I'd hope to live a more transparent life as well going forward with even you all, my brothers in Christ and my sisters in Christ, in taking their needs and wants and really asking, how are you doing, and meaning the concern that comes with those questions. And I hope that you all feel the same with me and the other brothers and sisters around you, even people who don't even think that they can. Some of the toughest people that I've met, especially in the brotherhood and in our churches and ecclesias, when you catch them, and for me, my personal experience is that my most intimate conversations with men specifically occurred too late. They occurred, but they occurred months before their death.
Yep.
David probably knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And
too many times.
And I think it's about time for the betterment of the brotherhood, for the betterment of all of our relationships, that we have these conversations, we speak up. Come on. The real strength comes with having these conversations. Mm-hmm. And, last thing that I want to mention is that we don't tell anyone that they're less than because they're taking diabetes medicine, right? Or that they're taking my heart rate, my heart pressure is a little bit crazy, so I got to take a pill to stabilize that, right? Mental health is the same thing. I think that there's this train of thought that mental health begins at bad, right? We normally only hear the phrase when it gets bad, but mental health is just like your regular health. It might be bad sometimes, it might be good, but we can't stigmatize it by every time we hear it. It's like, oh no, this person's crazy. Oh no, this person's on pills. Oh no, because that doesn't help any of us. And so just to sum everything up, we learned how to identify and make sure that we have that ability to understand what's happening and speaking about it, whether to seek therapy or to seek help within the ecclesia or pray about it. We realize tools. There's so many tools, right? You have the ecclesia, you have the church, you have God, you have therapy, in the fleshly form, and even medicine, right? And all these tools are appropriate at certain times. And we have faith, right? Faith that's, as David said, that's home base. We got to keep on coming to that. We have to keep on coming to the scriptures and, getting, advice from those around us who are spiritually inclined. And lastly, we are not alone. You are not alone. I'm not alone. And, with that being said, thank you all so much. And Levi, thank you for having this vulnerable discussion. Matthew, you especially, for being able to tell us and open the window to, a little bit of your story. And hopefully this can make us all stronger as a piece of content that, can be shared. And if you see this, and I battle with this as well, I tend to look at things, and you see how Matthew, you gave quotes, David, Uncle Brother Tyrone as well. You were able to, things that have helped you shared it. If this piece of content helped you in any way, please share it, right? Because, the scripture, what is the scriptures but an old version of Wikipedia and stuff that we can learn to? Spiritually, it has the divine power that's backed by God, but these are stories that are shared. These are struggles that are shared. These are pains that are shared. And, there's an ultimate redemption from that as believers that we see coming in his son's kingdom. So thank you all once again, and we really appreciate it.
Hashtag, you are not alone.
You are not alone.
Hashtag.